These past 2 weeks have been a crazy amalgamation. Noah, if you can take me off the big screen because it doesn't quite sync up with my voice, please. These past 2 weeks have been a crazy amalgamation of emotions and experiences for me. Right after our Shabbat evening service 2 weeks ago with our tapestry scholar Yehuda Kurtzer, I learned of the death of a friend and the husband of my cantorial colleague in New York. That Saturday afternoon, my family and I went to see Hamilton at the Orpheum, which we have been looking forward to since it was announced last year. I then flew to New York and participated in the funeral and Shiva of my friend David Greenberg. Yes, I did fill a suitcase full of New York bagels and black and white cookies, but it was truly a mission of the heart. Upon my return, we held our last and best Rock Shabbat service of the year before celebrating with the entire Bleicher clan at Jerome's bar mitzvah. In the meantime, members of my own family flew in for Emily's graduation from Elkhorn North High School, which took place this past Sunday. Rabbi Berzin and I were honored to participate in a Beit Din with Rabbi Felch from Lincoln to welcome in 3 new members, 3 young men, into the Jewish community, each of whose journey we got to learn more about. Now that I think about it, amalgamation is probably the wrong word. It was truly a whiplash of emotions, from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, or so I thought. Then we learned of the tragic murder of 2 young people who were on their way to an event in Washington, D.C., held by the American Jewish Committee. Collectively, the Jewish world has been mourning the death of Yaron Lachinsky and Sarah Milgram, as well as condemning the power of hate speech, which may have inspired their killer. As we know, words matter. And then last night, I was invited to attend and participate in the Friedel Day School Spring Showcase and first ever 8th grade graduation, which included Dr. Ari Cohen's son and Rabbi Stephen Abraham's daughter. And then this weekend, my family and I will be joining with the Fellman family in celebrating Dick Fellman's 90th birthday. Now, this list does not include the many regular meetings, including our annual congregational meeting and awards presentation, and the many myriad of other events and programs that were going on over these past 2 weeks. It is, just as I look back, I was struck by our double portion of Bahar Bechukotai. In Bechukotai it says, Im Bechukotai techelu ve'et mitzvotai tishmeru va'asitam otam. If you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, I will grant rains in their season, so that the earth shall yield its produce and the trees of the field their fruit. You shall eat your fill of bread and dwell securely in your land. I will grant peace in the land, and you shall lie down untroubled by anyone. Or as we might say, if we faithfully follow God's mitzvot, we will be granted many blessings, including not just prosperity, but also the blessings of safety and security. But as the Torah says just a little while later, V'im lo tishmeru li, v'lo ta'asu et kol hamitzvot ha'ela. But if you do not obey me and do not observe all these commandments, if you reject my laws and spurn my rules, so that you do not observe my commandments and you break my covenants, I will in turn do this to you. I will wreak misery upon you. The text then goes on in very explicit ways to describe all the ways the Israelites will be punished for failing to keep the mitzvot. Or to put it another way, what is Bahar Bechukotai talking about? Blessings and curses. I was thinking about this in context of these past 2 weeks in particular. Is what Leviticus saying, does this mean that my friend David or that Yaron or Sarah violated some precept of our sacred tradition? Probably not. Or does it mean that some families this past week who were not only blessed to see their children graduate, but were blessed with amazing weather in which to enjoy these celebrations, were they so blessed because they were particularly observant? Again, probably not. Either of these theological approaches is very troubling, to put it mildly. When thinking about blessings and curses, at least how they are enumerated in the Torah, I think there might be another approach, how we can think about the text. An approach that is equally not particularly comforting, but an approach that at least might help lead to some understanding. Sadly, I would argue, to be Jewish means we get to live with both the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I was listening to a podcast, Identity Crisis, hosted by our visiting scholar Yehuda Kurtzer. As an aside, if you haven't listened to his episode entitled Jewish in the Heartland, which is all about his experiences here in Omaha, I highly recommend it. The more recent one is entitled When Do We Speak Up?, which involves an interview with the ADL's emeritus, Abe Foxman. On it, Abe notes that between the lynching of Leo Frank in Atlanta in 1915 and the Tree of Life massacre in 2018, during those 100 years, there were at best three recorded murders of Jews because they were Jews in the United States. During that time, especially after World War II, we experienced some of the lowest incidences of anti-Semitism in the country. But as Abe notes, it was always there. As Deborah Lipstadt describes, being the world's oldest conspiracy theory, anti-Semitism never goes away. It just changes and morphs. And we are, of course, seeing it rise just as so many cultural norms are breaking down. As Abe argues, with the rise of the internet and the decline in civility, it has created fertile breeding ground for what was completely unacceptable behavior in most circles. On the other hand, in a different podcast, Call Me Back with Dan Siener, he argues that the best way to fight anti-Semitism is to live Jewish lives of meaning. In other words, to be unapologetically Jewish. He argues we need to lean into our Judaism. We need to invest more in our day schools and our Jewish camps and programs like Hartman that encourage more adult learning. He argues that synagogues will always be here because we need a place to cry. But we need to find even more avenues to live our Judaism proudly and openly. Curses and blessings. The tension between anti-Semitism and Jew hate and living a vibrant Jewish lives of meaning. Listening to these two podcasts back to back, I suffered from the same whiplash I was talking about a little while ago. I wasn't sure how to navigate between the two until last night at Friedel Springs Showcase and graduation. It was at that moment I had the aha, the epiphany, which may have also been inspired by our Zohar class earlier in the day. In Zohar, we read the passage, Rabbi Shimon and all the companions were singing the song of Torah, innovating words of Torah, each one of them. Rabbi Shimon and all the other companions rejoiced. As a class, we struggled with this passage until we looked at the footnote which said, singing the song of Torah means Torah is a song, according to the Babylonian Talmud. This is not a reference to how Torah is to be chanted, but instead, I would argue, it instead is all about the jazz of Torah, the improvisation of Torah, that Torah is not a static text, but instead, by exploring it, it creates ripples and harmonies and insights in unexpected ways. So too the students last night sang in Hebrew and in English. They played instruments and they demonstrated that even amidst a rising hate, there are truly opportunities to rejoice and celebrate our heritage. This is all a way of saying that we must not let the curses of being Jewish be those that define us. As Dan Siener mentioned, he said it was David Hartman who spoke about the two polarities in Jewish life. Auschwitz, the experience that won't let us forget that we are Jews, and Sinai, the positive force of revelation, the celebration of our Jewish heritage. All too often, We are allowing others to define our Jewishness through us, through their hate and their intolerance, and sadly nowadays, their acts of violence. But that only works if we let them get away with it. It doesn't mean that the hate will go away, but we must not live in fear and isolation. To be Jewish means to live in community. It means to open our hearts to the possibilities of suffering, but also the possibilities of joy. Are we Auschwitz Jews or are we Sinai Jews? I would argue in such times as these, there's really only one clear path forward, and that is to live as Sinai Jews, unapologetically Jewish. Now, this does not mean there isn't space for sacred disagreement and the pain and hurt, because our community, your community, does not always represent or fully embody the values that you wish to be seen brought to the forefront in the way that you want it to be embodied. To struggle is a core part of the Jewish journey, which we have spoken about many times from this pulpit. But on a night such as this, I think it is also important to remember that we will not give in to fear or hate. We will bury our beloved dead, including those who died Kiddush Hashem, for the sanctity of God's name, simply for being Jewish or being thought of as Jewish. And yet, we will not be diminished, dismayed, or dissuaded from our mission to strive to be a light unto the nations. To be Jewish means to live between the blessings and curses, between the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I would not have it any other way. As we conclude a book of Torah, we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. In strength and through strength may we be strengthened. Or to put it another way, through each other and through our tradition, may we find the strength to keep moving forward, no matter what the days or weeks ahead may present us. Shabbat Shalom.